Alright, welcome to H-7 Quadratic Formula Part 2. Period 6 for sure. Should for sure be watching this. You might be watching this if you missed class. Okay, so you want this glue in. If you don't have the glue in, you can just write it in, but be really, really careful because the formula you have to make sure you write exactly like it is. It's really, really important. Okay, so remember we're working with a quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And then we have this formula here. That's our quadratic formula. X equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Let me sing it one more time. I'm really good at it. Ready? X equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, and what's a really important part of this formula is this equals 0. In order to know our a, b, and c, we have to have this equation equal to 0. Okay, so that's kind of the new part today. So this equals 0. Alright, so if you want to use a highlighter or a yellow colored pencil, you can. We're going to do two examples. I'm going to start up here because this paper was kind of long. Alright, our first one we have 8n squared minus 10 equals 6n minus 4. The big thing we need to do before we find our a, b, and c is we need to be equal to 0. So I'm going to start by drawing that line down the equal sign. I'm going to move these things over so that I eliminate these and I only want 0. So I'm going to start by getting rid of this minus 4. So to undo a minus 4, we would add 4. We do it to one side, do it to the other. So this 8n squared is still 8n squared plus negative 10 plus 4. Negative 10 plus 4 is negative 6 equals, now the 4 is gone, so we're left with just the 6n. Again, our goal is to get to 0. Okay, so I want to get that all gone. If I wanted to keep the n, but just wanted to get rid of the 6, I could divide, but because I want to make it a 0, I have to take away the whole thing. So I'm going to subtract 6n. Now this has just one n. This one's an n squared, and that's a constant. So I'm going to kind of sneak it in the middle there, but I can't combine it with either one. So over here I'll write 8n squared minus 6n plus negative 6. And over here we have the 6n and 6n, and that makes 0. Okay, and that was one of the really important concepts of today, so if you would like to highlight that, box it, show off that that's really important. Okay, so now at this point, we should know what is our A, our B, and our C. So remember, it goes ax squared. So next to that n squared is our 8. So A is 8. B goes next to the x. In this case, it's an n. So that's actually a negative 6. And our c, the constant, is negative 6 as well. And that's okay that we have two that are the same, as long as they're showed separately in our equation here. So now it's time to use the formula. So our formula starts with x equals, which we would use, but this time it's n. So we're going to say n equals, we have a long fraction. And we start with the opposite of b. So our b is negative 6. And when we have an opposite of a negative, the opposite of a negative is a positive. So put a positive 6. Plus or minus, I like to put a little space between mine. Square root. Now this starts with b squared. So I'm going back to my original b at negative 6. Squared minus 4, and that's times a times c. So our a is 8. And our c, we have negative 6. It's all over 2a. So 2 times our a is 8. Okay, it's really important that we take our time writing that. That is going to make it whether or not we have the right answer or not. Double check. Opposite of b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, yep, all over 2a, yep. Alright, so at this point we're going to break it up into that plus and that minus, because it's a plus or minus. I'm going to say 6 plus, and then I'm going to find the inside of the square root. So I'm going to use my Desmos calculator, which I have on my phone, but you should use your calculator on your computer. Remember, it's at 327. Okay? And in there, we have this parenthesis, negative 6 squared minus 4, parenthesis 8, parenthesis negative 6. Okay, and we get 228. So 6 plus the square root of 228 over 2 times 8. And we're going to write almost the exact same thing over here, but instead of a plus, we're using a minus. So we're going to say 6 minus the square root of 228 all over 2 times 8. And then at this point, we can put that into our calculator. When we put it into our calculator, the first thing we're going to want to do is to use the division sign or that fraction sign. We have to set up that fraction before we start typing in. So 6 plus square root of 228 over 2 times 8. In our first answer, we get 1 point. We want 2 decimal places. So we have to decide if we're going to keep it a 31 or if we want to round it up to a 32. And that 8 tells me to round up to a 32. So my first answer is n equals 1.32. Because that 8 tells me that 31 should go up to a 32. Okay? Now the other thing I have to do is instead of a plus, all I need to do is change that plus here into a minus. We get negative 0.5687293,044. So we're going to say, or n equals negative 0 point, and we're going to think, do I need to keep it a 56 or round up to a 57? And that 8 tells me I'm going to round up to a 57. And that's our answer. Okay, we have one more problem that we're going to do together. Number 2, I think I can fit it in here. You probably want about 10 lines at least. Alright, oops, trying to move it up. There we go. Alright, number 2, we have 12w squared minus 24w plus 6 equals negative 12w. So again, today the big goal is that we need it to equal 0. Okay? So I can't have that negative 12w there, and I want to get rid of that whole thing. So to get rid of a negative 12w, we're going to add 12w. If we do it to one side, we're going to do it to the other side. Put it right underneath that negative 24 because they both have the w's. So I have 12w squared plus, now this is a negative 24 plus 12. So if you need to use your calculator, that's totally fine. Negative 24, oops, plus 12, and we get negative 12. So plus negative 12w plus 6 equals, and then there's nothing left over here, so it still would be 0. So now we have that equals 0. That was a really important part. Once we see that equals 0, we can now identify what is our A, our B, and our C. So our A is that first part here, which would be 12. B is negative 12. And C, we have is 6. So we're at the point ready to use our formula. Instead of x equals, we'll say w equals. Long fraction. X equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so we're going to start with opposite of b. So opposite of negative 12 would be a positive 12 plus or minus square root we're going to start with b squared. So our b is negative 12 squared minus 4 times our a is 12, times our c, which is 6, all over 2 times our a, which is 12. All right, we can break that up into our plus and into our minus. So I'm going to have 12 plus the square root of something over 2 times 12. And 12 minus something, square root of something, over 2 times this 12. Okay, so in my calculator I'm going to put in that part in the square root. So I'm going to do parenthesis, negative 12 squared minus 4 times 12 times 6. We'll get negative 144. So in that square root, we'll put negative 144. And I already rewrote it. I just need to fill in that negative 144. All right, now we're ready to just type in this whole thing. So I'm going to go ahead and enter. Do my fraction line first. I do that a over b, or a dividing sign. 12 plus the square root of negative 144 over 2 times 12. What? Undefined. Did I type it in wrong? 12 plus square root. Nope. Typed it in right. What if I change it to a minus? Still get undefined. So undefined means that there isn't an answer. Remember when we talked about this when we were graphing, it was that there could be 2 answers, like this last one. Yesterday we talked about how there could be 1 answer, but there's also that option that there's no real solutions. Remember, that means there can be imaginary, but we aren't learning those yet. So that's why I put that word real in there. So our answer is no real solutions. Now why is that? Well, if we take a look at those fractions, the square root, under that square root we have that negative 144. Okay, if we go back to unit D, way back in time, unit D, right here, we actually highlight it. Square root cannot equal a negative. So remember, when we have that square root equal to a negative, it does not work. Square root cannot equal a negative. So here our square root is a negative, doesn't work. Okay, so that would result in no real solutions. All right, there is an H-7 quick check today that you should take. Remember, we have a review Wednesday, one pager Thursday, test is Friday. Okay, bye.